I'm Perry Willis. I have twice been the National Director of the Libertarian Party. I've been on the LNC multiple times. I've worked on 5 LP presidential campaigns, managed 2 of them, and provided the strategy for a third. Written a lot of direct mail for a lot of famous libertarians, founded the downsizedc.org and the Zero Aggression Project, and co-created 3 pieces of legislation: the Read the Bills Act, the One Subject at a Time Act, and the Write the Laws Act, all of which have been introduced in Congress multiple times, and have had over the years increasing numbers of co-sponsors. My current gig is, earlier this year I was asked by Stephen Nicalia, the chair of the National Libertarian Party, if I would come to work for the LP again and recreate something called Project Archimedes, which was a membership, thank you. Project Archimedes was a membership growth campaign that I did in the mid to late 90s, and it resulted in the highest membership level the Libertarian Party's ever had and the highest income level the party's ever had. I told Stephen that I would not come back to do Project Archimedes, but I would come back to do something much, much larger, because I think the potential today is much, much larger. And he agreed to that, and so here I stand. We are doing something called, not Project Archimedes, but the Parity Project. The aim of the Parity Project is to achieve total parity with the Democrats and Republicans in size, visibility, funding, and electoral success within 10 years. Now, that probably sounds like a crazy goal, but the fact is that we already have the resources to do this, and in fact, we've pretty much always had the resources to do this. It's just that we didn't know where those resources were located and didn't have the focus to spend the money and the effort to go out and find them. And by resources, I mean people who already agree with us. When I was in my teens, my father, who was a Goldwater Republican, was talking to me about things that sounded suspiciously libertarian. But he didn't know that word. Then I read Robert I. Heinlein's The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, and I decided that that's what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to create what he called the Rational Anarchist Party. Little did I know that at that exact moment when I was reading that book, something called the Libertarian Party already existed and had run 2 presidential campaigns. So here again, here was a person, me, who was a libertarian, who was a resource for the Libertarian Party, whom the Libertarian Party did not know about, and I did not know about the Libertarian Party. Why was that? Why did me and my father not know about the Libertarian Party, and why did the Libertarian Party not know about us? It was because the Libertarian Party was invisible. Fast forward 4 years, 1980, a guy named Ed Clark, I don't know how many of you were around back then, Scott was for sure. He was the chief attorney of ARCO, and he had been the Libertarian Party candidate for governor of California in 1978, and had scored a pretty big number, 378,000 votes, as I recall. And so from that, it was decided by the party leaders that he would run for president, and on the ticket with him would be the billionaire David Koch, who would put millions of dollars into TV advertising. The result of that was one day in 1980, near election time, I was going to vote for Reagan, still didn't know about the Libertarian Party. One of my uncles said, "I saw a guy on television last night who sounded just like you." So he told me it was Ed Clark, something called Libertarian Party. I called up, asked for information, voted for Reagan on November 4th, which was my 20th birthday, was totally thrilled by the result. A couple days later, I got my info pack in the mail, and I decided I'd voted for the wrong guy. And from that point on, I've been doing Libertarian Party and libertarian-oriented stuff. But notice what this was that happened in 1980. It's just one example of it. Here I was, a libertarian who didn't know about the Libertarian Party, and the Libertarian Party didn't know about me. But because of Ed Clark and David Koch's television ads, suddenly there was visibility for the Libertarian Party, and we were able to find ourselves, to find each other. So then I go to work for the Libertarian Party of San Diego. And back then we had an electronic display of the Nolan chart. This was the early version of it that had 20 questions. And there were little toggle switches, and a light would move around as you move the toggle switches. And we would put this up everywhere we could think of, in front of libraries, fairs, everything. And anybody who scored in the libertarian sector, we would get their name, if we could, get their name and add contact information. And then I would go and meet with them and ask them to join the party. And the result of that process over a period of just a few months is the Libertarian Party of San Diego ended up being the third largest Libertarian Party membership organization in the entire world. Now that's cheating a little bit because the Libertarian Party was the only Libertarian Party in the entire world. The National Party obviously was the largest. The California Party, of which San Diego was a part, was the second largest. And San Diego then was the third largest membership organization. That meant that city party was larger than all of the other state parties in the entire country. Why was that? It's a very simple thing. We found out who the libertarians were, let them know about us, and asked them to join. So even back then, when we would do these Nolan chart tests, people were scoring, about 30% of the people were scoring in the libertarian quadrant. If you extend that to the entire population, that is millions and millions and millions of people who share most positions in common with us. But we didn't know who those people were, where they were, and most of them didn't know about us because we were invisible. So years go by, and Libertarian Party is working to expose libertarian ideas to people. Other organizations, Libertarian Movement, are working to expose these ideas. And little by little, without us even realizing it, the word libertarian and its meaning was becoming known by more and more people. So that by the time we started Project Archimedes in the 1990s, we were very much in the same position that I'd been in the San Diego LP when we had the big membership growth there. There were a lot more people who actually knew the word libertarian, knew they were libertarians, and were on some list somewhere where we could connect with them. And the result is we finished that effort with 33,000 members, starting basically from where the Libertarian Party is currently today, a little over 9,000 members. We ended with 33,000 members and about 45,000 18-month donors, and an adjusted for inflation income of $6 million, which is probably, I don't know what the LP budget is this year, but it's probably a sixth or something of that amount.
It's under $1 million.
So there you go. Between Project Archimedes and now, things have continued to progress. It was just when we did Project Archimedes, it was just the beginning of the internet and the World Wide Web. We made use of it, but we didn't really know how to use it. But in the intervening 25 years, all the organizations of the libertarian movement have become very good at using the internet. We didn't have social networking in the Project Archimedes days. All we had was direct mail. And we didn't have Ron Paul running for president for the Republican nomination 2 times in the space of 10 years. And we didn't have a governor like Gary Johnson coming along and running twice and getting lots of visibility. So what has happened since Project Archimedes and today is that millions and millions and millions and millions of people who had libertarian values all along, maybe not as hardcore as you and I, but on most issues, most of the time, they agreed more with us than the Democrats and Republicans, but they had never known the concept libertarian before. Now they did, because of all this intervening work. We look at our vote totals, which are very much a function of winner-take-all voting system, and we think, every time we run, we get 2% of the vote or 1% of the vote, and so we think we're not making progress. I would submit to you that we've made tremendous progress, but it's all subterranean, invisible to us, and most importantly, unharvested by us. I first started realizing how big this shift was when some people were building a patio roof on my house, and all of the workmen were libertarians. None of them were members of the Libertarian Party, but they all called themselves libertarians. Then my wife had a woman that she worked with. Her husband was a fighter pilot in the Air Force. Talking to him one day, and he just says out of the blue, he doesn't even know yet what I do. He says, I'm a libertarian. I don't buy all this stuff we're doing. His brother was a libertarian. Neither one of them were members of the Libertarian Party. So then there was a debate between Paul Krugman and Nate Silver. And Paul Krugman wrote a column for the New York Times arguing that there were no libertarians. Nate Silver pushed back. He said, no, there actually are a lot of libertarians. And he said, according to our data, there are about 11% of the population who self-identify as libertarian, and another 30–40%, I forget the exact numbers, that have libertarian positions on the issues. So that got me interested in the subject of how can we quantify where we actually stand now. We have what Nate Silver says. Are there other studies that we can look at? Turned out there were about 14 of them, and they all showed something similar, which were very much in line with the Nolan chart quiz results from way back in 1980. What the studies and the surveys showed was about 30 million Americans self-identify as libertarians. They know the difference between liberal, conservative, and libertarian, and they choose to call themselves libertarians. Then on top of that, there are another 30 million who hold libertarian positions on the issues, even though they don't yet profess that label. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but 30 million people is a slightly larger number than 9,000 Libertarian Party members. So that suggests that there is a huge amount of progress that we could make very quickly if we just do one simple thing. All these years, we have been thinking that the way we have to create a libertarian society is we have to go out and convince all the left statists and right statists of all their many varieties to agree with us and to become libertarians. But that's actually not true at all. All we have to do, to get to parity at least, is just to find, recruit, and activate the people who already agree with us. And that's what the Parity Project is designed to do. And it is so profoundly simple, it's almost embarrassing to describe what it will do. It will simply ask people, are you a libertarian, libertarian-leaning, or libertarian curious? And if the answer to one of those questions is yes, would you like to see the Libertarian Party equalize with the Democrats and Republicans within the next 10 years? And if the answer to that question is yes, please put your name in our database so that we can send you progress reports about our growth toward that goal. We get their name in our database, we're going to send them a couple PDFs as recruitment premiums. One is called The Libertarian Future, what it would be like and how to get there. And it will tell a story in reverse. And the story in reverse works like this. You wake up in the morning and you find yourself in a voluntarist America. And what would that be like? And so you, in the document, in the PDF that we're going to send them, we start going back in time, showing all of the steps that the society went through to get to a voluntarist America. Well, one of those steps, one of those milestones along the way was a limited state America, where the state is limited to the functions of the Constitution. And you go back and describe what that would be like and how that would happen. You go back a little bit further and look at the steps that led to that. And what that is essentially describing is what I would call small government libertarianism, which is the kind of socially liberal, fiscal conservative approach to libertarianism that Gary Johnson was an advocate of. And I think those three things, voluntarist, limited state, and small government libertarian, are the three tent poles of the big tent Libertarian Party. You get those people together into a political party, you can start changing things in a number of different ways. So then the Libertarian Future document goes on to explain what the plan would be, the steps would be to get to that first stage, which is the small government libertarian world. So then there's another document that they'll get, because I think repetition is very important, called The Plan, How to Create a Libertarian America in as little as 10 years with resources that already exist. And it describes a little of what I've said to you here so far. I'm going to go in a little bit more detail, and then I will open it up to questions. So underlying the plan, the Parity Project as a whole, are two strategies. One is discovery before persuasion. Instead of trying to persuade people as your main focus, try to discover first the people who already agree with you. Then that will give you the resources to persuade people who currently disagree with you. So discover the areas of agreement first, recruit those people, use those resources to try and persuade. We've had it backwards. We've spent resources trying to persuade rather than to discover. So discovery before persuasion is the first strategy. The second strategy I call Operation Everywhere. As our resources grow, we need to get to the point where libertarian ideas, libertarian organizations, libertarian candidates are visible to everyone every day. Every single minute of the day, people are exposed to libertarianism. They cannot go anywhere or do anything without encountering libertarianism. When we have that, we will have visibility parity with the Democrats and Republicans, because they already have that. You cannot go anywhere for even a minute without hearing something about the Democrats or Republicans. We have to get to that point. And the way you get to that point is through the first strategy of discovering and recruiting and activating all the people who already agree with you. Through those two strategies, we'll be able to activate 5 different tactics. And each tactic becomes possible at a low, there's a low level of recruitment that's required to do the first tactic, and then a higher level of recruitment that's required to do the 5th and final tactic. The lowest tactic we could start to implement is probably with about 200,000 activated members, and that would be lobbying Congress to pass legislation of the type that we created at Downsize DC, the Read the Bills Act, the One Subject at a Time Act, the Write the Laws Act. This is stuff that is either transpartisan, that people of all political stripes would support, or it's at least something that 2 of the 3 parties would support, so that you could get enough votes in Congress to pass it. You pass something like One Subject at a Time Act, instantly the congressional leaders are lose a lot of their power. You pass the Bills Act, they lose more power and their ability to grow government is reduced dramatically. You pass the Write the Laws Act, which requires every regulation enforced by the executive branch to first be passed by Congress, and you kneecap the power of the executive branch to grow government without congressional support. So that's tactic one, and you can probably do that. You can probably start to pass that kind of legislation if you have 200,000 signed up, committed people who are willing to badger their representatives. The second tactic would be, I don't quite have all these memorized yet, so let's see if I can do this. I think the second tactic is media lobbying. So one of the big advantages that the Democrats and Republicans have over us is every single media show there is usually, assuming the channel hasn't gone completely for one party or the other, which obviously MSNBC and Fox have done that. But there's lots of other shows out there where it's very common to have a Republican and a Democrat on a talking head show offering opposing viewpoints. But there's no libertarian. Actually, on Fox, occasionally there is a libertarian. But if we had about 800,000 libertarians, we could start demanding that the establishment media recognize the fact that we are their customers, and the customer is always right. And the customer wants, we, the customers, want to have libertarians represented in the news. So we would start to infiltrate through this process the establishment news media. Now, the establishment news media is not that important anymore, and it may become less and less important as we go along. But these sorts of lobbying tactics can also be used to influence the podcast universe. Because if you have a lot of libertarians who are watching podcasts and commenting and liking and disliking, especially when there are libertarians appearing, it begins to become apparent to people that we get more traction if we get libertarian guests on, because these libertarians are active and they care, and we get eyeballs because of them. So that's another step. That tactic is another step toward Operation Everywhere, making ourselves visible all the time. A third tactic, I think we calculated this, the minimum for this would probably be about 1 million people. If you had 1 million Libertarian Party members, all of whom knew about jury nullification, you would start to have enough people nullifying in enough cases, enough times, that prosecutors would start to realize that it's going to hurt my record and waste my time for me to prosecute these cases because it's just going to be nullified. So notice that the first step of changing legislation, we haven't even elected anybody yet. The second step of getting more visibility in the media, we haven't elected anybody yet, but yet we're becoming more powerful. Third step, jury nullification, we still haven't elected anybody, but we're becoming more powerful. The next step is the initiative process. When you're up around 1 or 2 million dues-paying active libertarians around the country, you have the resources then to start doing initiatives in all sorts of different places. And it is inevitable that some libertarian ideas are going to become popular in some places before they become popular in other places. And there's all sorts of things you could do then. You could, for instance, pass initiatives that would prohibit local law enforcement from enforcing victimless crime laws. There's all sorts of things you could do with initiatives. And here again, you're changing policy, you're changing law, you're changing the state without yet having elected anybody, just because you have grown larger. Then the fifth and final one is electoral success. So there's this strange phenomenon that, I gotta check my clock here, how far I'm doing okay. How many people do you think you would have to have scattered around in the right districts in order to completely control the Democratic and Republican primaries? Anybody have any guesses? Scott, what would you guess?
I don't really have a guess, but it's not that many.
It's not.
Because so many districts are gerrymandered to favor one or the other, and there's only a few districts that actually decide.
That's right. The number is between 10 and 13 million Americans. So I'm not saying that the LP should do this or will do this, but if the LP wanted to, it could. When it had 10 to 13 million members, it could start running candidates in the primaries of the two major parties, in the Democratic primary in a Democrat gerrymandered district, and in the Republican primary in a Republican gerrymandered district. And it could start electing people through that route. Now, even if the LP itself, and then, of course, if the Libertarian candidate didn't win the primary, then the LP could run its own candidate in the general. It probably couldn't be the same person because of sore loser laws. But you could do that. And one of the interesting things that's going to happen here is even if the LP did not decide to formally do this, it would happen naturally because there will be more Libertarian donors and people like Thomas Massey and Justin Amash and Rand Paul and people we don't, whose name we don't even know yet, are going to take advantage of those resources to run in Democratic and Republican districts as Democrats and Republicans. The other thing, though, that happens at 10 to 13 million is you are able to buy advertising that equals the visibility of the Democrats and Republicans. And at that point, you are able to, you essentially reached parity with the Democrats and Republicans, and you're going to start winning elections. And what I predict will happen is you will have Libertarians in legislative bodies, you will have Libertarian Republicans in legislative bodies, you will have Libertarian Democrats in legislative bodies, and they will vote together as a bloc, and eventually they will cross the line and they will all be Libertarians, just as Justin Amash is now a Libertarian Party member. So this is the vision I see for us, and this is what I think is going to happen, and it's what we're trying to make happen starting now. And I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody might have. Scott?
I'll go ahead and start it off because everybody else is shy, because that's how libertarians are. Not that long ago, except for you young people, might seem like a long time ago, our heyday in Arizona was 94, 95, 96. Bob Dole versus Bill Clinton. You know, two relatively boring candidates, and we weren't as polarized as we are now. We weren't as driven by.
But we, you mean the country as a whole?
The country as a whole.
Yeah.
Do you see this dynamic in the project you propose, getting past the fear-based polarization that we have?
My first answer to most questions is I don't know. My second estimate, honestly, my intuition is that the Democrats are going to die, and we will end up with a two-party system that's populist Republicans versus Libertarians. I could easily be wrong, but it feels like at the moment that the Democrats are not going to be able to free themselves from the woke toxin, and that it will ultimately kill them. But that's a wild-ass intuition, and it's not a... Now, to answer your question in another way, once we have universal visibility, I think that's really when persuasion begins. And to the extent that we can persuade people of the virtues of libertarian nonviolence, that could make things less polarized. Any other questions? Yes, sir. I'll get you next.
Yeah, I remember reading about Project Archimedes, the original one, and y'all would do mailings to different lists and get like the return on it, and it was kind of exciting sounding. Are y'all doing, but and you were testing like gun lists or magazines or Reason Magazine or Cato or Registered Libertarians or whatever. Are y'all doing that now? Like, have y'all actually gotten some stuff out and getting some feedback on this group's good, this group's so-so, or?
Good question. So for the past year, I'm sure you all know, the LP's been in kind of a down cycle. And part of that down cycle is it couldn't afford to email to all of the email names that it had on its list. It's about 250,000 names. I don't know if you noticed, but 250,000 is a lot larger than 9,000. So there's a lot of potential out there just in our own email list that has not been realized, and so we're starting out with that. So we started mailing to them again, and we had to go through a long priming process to start mailing to those names again, because when you haven't mailed to names in a while and you just blast out 250,000 at once, they all go into spam folders. So we're finally through that pump priming process, and hopefully next week we're going to be starting a membership drive designed to convert as many of those 250,000 into dues-paying members as possible. At the same time, we have a million registered libertarians who have been loaded up into social networks so that we can reach them with social network advertising. And those ads, hopefully the first test ads for that will begin next week. And so that's a million people. I don't know if you noticed, but that's a lot larger than 9,000. So there's some good early potential here. Ultimately, however, I think that we should be able to do this recruitment just by using the metaphorical version of the phone book. There are 73, depending on what number you use, I'm going to use 68. There are 68 million Americans who self-identify as Democrats, 68 million who self-identify as Republicans, 30 million who self-identify as Libertarian, and probably 60 million who actually are Libertarians. That suggests to me that we ought to be able to do the kind of recruitment I'm talking about doing just by using the metaphorical equivalent of the telephone book. I don't think we're going to need a lot of targeting. We just need to go out and ask people, are you libertarian, libertarian leaning, or libertarian curious? So does that answer your question? Yes. Yeah. Yes?
I'm going to kind of combine both of these questions with something you said earlier. You said something about 10 years, what the attention of being in. I'm an independent, and independents are a big movement, and,
Yep.
And I was very progressive most of my life, which I became independent. And I'm seeing that on the right too, with Marjorie Taylor Greene. So can you envision, if you could envision, what would it look like if you didn't have the duopoly anymore, and the Libertarian Party didn't have to compete with them? What would that look like in maybe 10 years? Because the system is falling apart around us.
So my friend Jim Babka refers to something called the libertarian diaspora. We libertarians that are in the party are living in the homeland. All the other libertarians are living spread out in the diaspora all around the world. And what that means in real terms is a lot of the libertarians are thinking of themselves as either independents, Republicans, or Democrats. So as we grow in size by discovering the people who agree with us and grow in visibility because of the resources they provide, I expect the people who self-identify as Democrats and Republicans to shrink. So their market share will get smaller as ours gets larger. That's what I expect to happen. Does that answer your question?
No, but I agree with you. What I'm thinking of, what happens if the whole duopoly that they have now, the control and structures of money, buying, influence, it all goes away? What could you see as a potential future landscape, what politics may look like in America?
Well, I don't know that we will, even in a voluntarist America, you know, what I'd like to ask you to do is ask Drew for my email address, and I will, and contact me. I'll give you my email address, and I will send you a copy of the Libertarian Future. And if you want to read that, and after you've read that, we could have a conversation about your question. I think my answer would make more sense then. I don't think it would make, I think I'd have to talk for 30 or 40 minutes to make it make sense here. So it's a complicated subject, I think.
It's an important subject, Dick.
I think you're an LP employee who I've not met, right, Lisa?
No, I'm not an employee. I am actually, I wear a lot of hats.
She's a friendly.
I'm a good friend of Drew's and Kara's and Peter's. I work for the John Birch Society, which
Okay.
is the natural action arm. Drew told me that when we first met. We're the natural action arm of the Libertarian Party, even though they're mostly Republicans in that organization. The first thing, there's a couple of things you said. One is, I believe that the values are truly Americanist values. I'm an Americanist. I love our country. I love our founding values, our principles, okay? And I think that if everything you say comes to fruition, that's where we're headed, and hopefully globally, and it's free people everywhere, okay? I love the word voluntarist.
Well, we have a start, right, in Argentina.
But I am, just so you know, I am a registered Republican, always have been, and that is for a reason. That's how I get into those organizations and talk. It's not because I'm not at heart a libertarian, and Drew knows this.
Yeah.
So it's how I'm able to go to their groups and talk. I wanted to say, you said something about initiatives and things like that on the ballot, okay? And I want to tell you right now, I've been deeply involved the last couple of years in election integrity and research and studies. And I want you all to know that all of our elections are completely fraudulent. Completely. We have no lawfully certified elections in this country in years. And so I would like to I want to get that piece you're going to send this lady. I want to see that. But I'd also like to meet with you and talk about the issues of elections and start having the Libertarian Party understand what I'm working on right now, because we're going to need all of you to demand. It's my understanding that Trump's going to issue an executive order before the midterms. And maybe if we actually finally have lawfully valid elections, we're going to see some libertarians get into office without all the difficulty. Because you see, our elections are a sham, and I can go over it with you in detail. I'm not going to take all that time right now. But that is, to me, the number one issue. We are not going to get Thomas Massey as a president. We're not going to get the people who have run before on the libertarian ticket into office. We're not going to get those initiatives passed if we don't clean up our elections first.
Well, I agree with you, and as we grow larger, we're going to be able to have more influence on that. And I think one of the things we'll be able to do as we grow larger is I think we'll be able to pass ranked choice voting, which I think will make a big difference.
I was voting, but I will tell you that we're already working with the AG, the FBI, and the ODNI to help straighten out the elections before the midterm, and hopefully thereafter this will continue on. So I would like to talk to you.
Well, that's good. And the great thing about the marketplace is it also applies to ideas and strategies. And if ranked choice voting is wrong, I bet it'll lose the competition. So we'll see what happens. Any other questions? Yes.
This is a combination of what this lady here said about money influence and this lady about elections. How is AI going to affect the voter at the poll? Are they sophisticated enough to see through manipulation?
My first answer is always I don't know. My second answer is I'm a little hard pressed to see the difference between gullible sucker voters taking all of their directions from AI versus gullible sucker voters taking all of their directions from demagogues who happen to be human beings. So I don't know that it's going to make that much big a difference. And because AIs are drawing on all the information in the world, it might even be a slight improvement.
We don't hate the media enough.
I wrote a book on AI, it's on Amazon, but I asked about the political system, and July before the election said Joe Biden won the election in November, and this was in July. So what I want to alert people to, who is ever feeding their bias into AI, is AI not being objective, garbage in, garbage out. So we really have to be aware that it's not the be all end all.
Well, again, to the extent that we become larger, we put more stuff on the internet for AI to read, and that'll help correct that. I think, okay, says I got to wrap, so I got to wrap. I have to leave here for a little bit to go do some work, but I'll be back this evening if anybody wants to talk further. So, thank you very much for your attention.